All these people are going to notice my voice, my camera. Is everybody here?
Yes, I believe so. I think we're good now. Thank you. Okay.
Did you get the?
Yes, I did. I got your,
I don't even know who I am. Who am I?
yeah, I got some of it.
It's my sister and brother.
I got your, section quizzes. These. I did not, I don't know, I might have gotten your other stuff too. I don't remember. Yeah.
I just thought the names were really funny because, Fred and they're just like Fred spelled that way. I just like that. Oh, 566.
So here's your, you might, I need to
Oh.
record these yet, so I'm gonna hold on to these. These won't affect your test, so I'm gonna hold on to those. Government stuff. Okay, that's for bids. Okay, so. Okay, so let's get started with class today. First thing that is up. Current events. Anything exciting happened in the world this week? Yes.
Somebody bombed New York.
Somebody bombed New York. And where else? Anybody else? And New Jersey. Anybody claiming responsibility for it?
Japanese people.
Huh?
The Japanese.
The Japanese, I don't think so.
They bombed New Harvard. Pearl Harbor. I said New Harbor. What is wrong
Pearl Harbor.
with me?
What? ISIS is claiming the attack in the Mall of America, the stabbing attack up in Minnesota. Did you guys hear about that one?
Yeah.
There was a stabbing attack up in Minnesota. 8, maybe 9 people, I think the latest I heard was 9 people were stabbed up in Minnesota. The guy was dressed as a security guard, walk up to people and ask them if they were Muslim. If they weren't Muslim, he'd stab them. And an off-duty police officer ended up shooting and killing the guy. So took care of that one. The bombings, there was New Jersey, New York. New Jersey, they found some bombs at a race for, it was supposed to be a charity race, 5K for the Marines. There was a bomb that they found there. That one didn't detonate, but they kind of dismantled it. The other one was in, let's see, where the other ones were in New York, and that one actually went off, which scared a lot of people. Luckily, like 29 people injured, but nobody serious. Really serious, yes.
Isn't the guy who did it, aren't they on the lookout for him? Because I heard like breaking news. Pictures of the guy.
Just before I came in here, I had heard that they had actually caught the guy. So let me, let's see here. When in doubt, always go to Drudge. Usually they have some information on breaking news. Or you can go to Fox News or any of those kinds of sites. How many are there? There was an FBI terror alert last week. Nobody let anybody know. Let's see if Fox News has anything different.
Yeah. Wasn't there a pipeline break?
Yes, which is why gas prices have gone up.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, there was a week they had to shut down one of the major pipelines. And that's been causing some problems on gas prices. Let's see if Fox News has anything. At some point, the TV will have cable. And we'll be, yeah, looks like they got it. So that's a picture of the guy. Suspect is in custody. So that's what he looks like. Can't quite tell, but looks like he might have some Arabic look to him. Has anybody seen it? I have not. The only thing I haven't seen is the guy's name for the one in New Jersey.
I saw a wanted poster this morning.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't seen that. Oh, here it is. Ahmad Khan Rami. Yeah. I guess there was a shootout. It's what I heard in the latest. So that's what we hear so far. I don't know if they'll now playing. It's not playing. Network's a little slow. Probably means that something's being downloaded. So yeah, so they caught the guy. He's in custody. It looks like now, and hopefully that means that they'll be a little safer in New York. This kind of coincides with the biggest thing that they're worried about is the United Nations having their summit is coming in. So they're worried about that. Maybe this was a precursor to the summit, why they might have been blowing things up now, just to kind of shake everything up. And terrorists always love to be seen. So what do? They do when there's major things going on, such as United Nations summit coming here to the United States, New York. So why not scare people in New York? You get better press coverage because everybody's here. Everybody from around the world's here. So that could have been the biggest concern, I think, is that this guy is just not by himself. He actually has a team of people working with him. And so there's concern that they need to capture everybody, involved. Looks like also fears of active terror cell. 100,000 Somali refugees admitted into the U.S. since 9/11. 15 Syrian refugees settled in New York. ISIS released. So this kind of really helps Donald Trump in the political realm because he's the one who wants to curtail immigration, make it a little bit easier for certain people, but harder for others so that we do a better job of screening through this stuff. So we'll see how that works. But at least we've got this guy. And what's amazing, even with all this going on, that within a day, I mean, think about this, these bombings happened Saturday. Within 2 days, they had the guy. What always amazes me too is there's no bombings at like a sports stadium. Like yesterday's football, tonight Monday Night Football. Nothing happens at these sporting events, which is kind of shocking. But it's a testament to the security that goes on at some of these places. Which brings us, of course, to anybody following all the protests going on with the football? Anybody following that? I'm about ready to be done with the NFL. I already sent a tweet. I was reading an article that the Philadelphia Eagles tonight are planning on a mass protest of their team during a possibility of a lot of the guys from the team not standing during the national anthem.
I heard about that.
So here's my take on national anthems. Standing for a national anthem is about not necessarily whether you agree or disagree with a country, but it is about respect. So if you're at another country or you're at the Olympics and they play the national anthem of another country, you should stand, not because you're saluting with that country, but you stand out of respect. Now, of course, people go, well, what if it was the Nazi anthem? Well, you don't stick your arm out and salute like the Nazis did, but you would stand and be respectful. Not telling you to put your hand over your heart to give a pledge to anything. Anytime that, there's a pledge, yes, refrain from doing it. But unless you have a religious conviction, which, of course, if I remember right, it's the Jehovah's Witnesses will not stand during the Pledge of Allegiance. That's a religious issue. That's not a protest issue. That is a clear religious issue there that they will not stand during any kind of, they won't say the pledge, they won't do anything like that. That's different. That's exactly what people who, fought and died for the flag is for. The other thing is, our flag in the United States is not a symbol of the government. It's not a symbol of that, of any of that. It is a symbol of freedom. There is a difference. And so therefore, and as it represents freedom, it also symbolizes the people who died protecting that freedom. And it's again another reason why we shouldn't be, we should not be protesting, turn our back or anything like that, because what you're really doing, and especially to veterans who have been wounded or died, or family members who've had people that died in these things, that you're disrespecting them. That's who you're disrespecting. So that's who Colin Kaepernick, which I love all these rich guys who've made tons of money, are protesting injustice and an unfair society in the United States. Okay, I didn't sign some $50 million contract to play football. I mean, come on. When you really put things in perspective, maybe we should be paying teachers $50 million a year if they're good. But no, we pay a football player $50 million. The other one that I heard is that, oh, this takes courage. Really? Does it really take courage? It's not like the government's going to come around and take Colin Kaepernick out and shoot him like they would in many of these other countries. So I don't really think it takes really that much courage to do what Colin Kaepernick has done.
Well, let's say you get invited to the White House.
No, yeah, of course he does, because we've got the protest in chief community organizer, Barack Obama, in office. Of course he's going to get invited to the White House. But does the president invite, another, show you just what kind of class the president is? When the Pope came to the United States and visited the White House, Barack Obama invited a bunch of gay and lesbian people to come and be at the meeting with the Pope. Don't think there was some meaning there? Here's the Catholic Church, who of course stands against the homosexual marriage. And what does the president do but bring pro-choice and gay rights people into the office to meet the Pope? It's disgraceful what he does. Any other? Of course, the Browns looked good for a quarter and a half and then lost. The Indians won 2 of 3 from the Tigers. So they're down to 7 games is their magic number, which is cool. Looks like we're going to win the American League Central and hopefully World Series this year, right? World Series. So we got the Cavs won, the Monsters won, now it's the Indians' turn, and we'll have to just keep waiting on the Browns. So we'll see. Wouldn't that be something? Cleveland is supposed to be a football town. And the Indians or the Cavs win the basketball championship. The Monsters win the hockey for their age, and then the Indians win the World Series. That'd be great.
Wait.
There's always things. That's the best. What's
More than that.
the best day in Cleveland's the best day for the Cleveland Browns? Draft day. Then after that, it starts going downhill because then they start analyzing who they pick. Although I will say this, I do think that the Browns did a pretty good job with their draft this year. Yes.
Wait, so which name goes with which sport? I'm not that into sports.
Indians is baseball.
The Cavaliers are
Cleveland Cavaliers are basketball.
Yeah.
The Monsters are hockey, and the Cleveland Indians are
football.
baseball.
Oh, baseball.
Yes.
What is it, ground or football?
Grounds or football?
I'm not that familiar with sports, because I do not watch.
Well, see, as this is a history class, you'll get to learn even football and baseball. Hockey. No, just kidding. I do like hockey, but
I like hockey.
you know, what do they say? Go to a fight and a hockey game broke out because there's so many fights in hockey.
They keep hitting people with a stick.
So on to chapter 3, colonial life. There's really not a lot to cover in this. I actually have some additional material in this. You know, we look at the early colonies in here. In fact, I don't know if there's anything but in our test, but the section on education. Yeah, because, like what you guys really want to know is what they ate, their diet. That's so important. But you will want to remember, what is the New England Primer? Anybody know?
Isn't that like their textbook?
Yeah, it was their first textbook.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something that some of the stuff that we'll be covering. One of the big things, you know, with the early colonies, of course, we started out with Jamestown in Massachusetts. Both began as communal groups, sharing equally amongst the people. Both colonies struggled during this time period. When they were sharing their stuff, it was very hard for them to, I think I talked about this either in government class, can't remember, was it in government class? Or was it in history last week that I talked about it? I don't remember. On the whole thing on, so, do another search. So I kind of briefly talked about this a little bit last week, that the original, especially the Plymouth colony, was set up in a communal style. They shared equally. So it's really the first bout of communism in the United States. So when anybody says that, well, communism, we've never tried it here in the United States, they're wrong. We have tried communism here in the United States, and it failed miserably. And it was not actually until they decided, this is kind of cool. So this is actually a picture of the Mayflower Compact as it would have looked in how he wrote it. So I always like to seeing stuff in their own pen, because they spelled things a lot differently than we do today. But so they started their own communal share and share alike. So this is kind of a replica of what his writing looked like. This is from William Bradford. And you can see, of course, they used a pen and a quill, so your letters are going to be look funny, but they even for, you know, here, look, he made a mistake. So he put in for our labor. And so they added things in as they went through doing this. And the actual text of it is here. And what you'll find actually in many textbooks, though, they leave out the first part. So they start out, in the name of God, amen. We whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord, King James. Now, just because we say dread, we think of dread differently. They think of dread in a different way. It probably means more powerful. And sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God of Great Britain, France, and King of England. So look at that. I mean, even by the grace of God, defender of the faith, etc., having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of Christian faith and honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia. So remember, their first act was actually they were trying to settle around the mouth of the Hudson River, and they actually end up moving up coast to Plymouth and decide to stay there. Well, what happens is, because of this, their charter, what they call a patent, only gave them permission to land in around the Hudson, around where we would see New York today. So what they did is they had to draw up this, and of course it wasn't called the Mayflower Compact back then, but they drew this up so that they could stay there. But notice they also mention in here, by these present solemnly and mutual in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together in a civil body politic. So they even took this idea of communism and even put it into writing, this covenant to share together, to combine. We're going to be together in this. And they meant more than just politically. They actually meant economically at first. So they were building on this idea of share and share alike, and they ran into some huge problems with that. So they would enable laws and ordinances, and all this was to get them established, because when the Mayflower went back, they had to go send back to get a new patent from the king in order for them to settle where they are at. You know, the king could have come back and said, no, go move back down to the Hudson, because you're not allowed to, you know, I gave you a patent for this. So they were kind of at the whim of the king. Of course, they probably could have said, no, we're not going to move. We never received that letter. Tear it up. No, I'm just kidding. They probably would have either just decided to stay and say, you know, we can't move, whatever. But remember, too, that first winter, they lost half their people. They lived on the Mayflower. They were trying to build houses. They landed in November. And they were supposed to actually be there a lot. They were actually trying to get there earlier, and so they didn't really have much to live on. Now, some of this stuff comes from another book that I highly recommend if you get a chance, and that is America's Forgotten History, Part 1, The Foundations, by Mark David Ledbetter. He's written 3 books on the history of the United States that are pretty good with some of the hidden stuff that most people don't know. So Jamestown, Massachusetts, you have first-person accounts from the 2 colonies describing the English stealing and begging from Indians or working for them. They were so poor that many times they would actually slave themselves out to the Indians to be able to survive. They described men playing games in the streets while fields lay untouched and food bins empty. Women and their children pleaded natural weakness as a reason to stay out of the fields. Men required more creativity, but still found excuses to avoid labor. So under this communist system, which is exactly what happened in Russia during the communism there, and why America does so much better, is we reward progress. Well, the same thing here under in Jamestown and Massachusetts, that they didn't have enough to eat, so they would actually, some of these guys would go and work for the Indians. They would slave for the Indians. Women would, I got to take care of the children, I can't work, I'm not strong enough. So Sir Thomas Dale in Jamestown and William Bradford, Massachusetts, both came to the same conclusion. Step by step, they introduced private property. Once men and their families could keep what they produced, the streets emptied of game players, Indian village emptied of English servants, English beggars and English thieves. Women and children suddenly found that they did, in fact, have the strength to work the fields. The dying times ended. So when they first came here, both these colonies struggled. They couldn't make it. Why? Because they couldn't profit. Profit is not an evil word, it's a good word. Ask your parents if they like to profit. Profit means that they keep more than what they pay out in expenses. That's what we call a profit. And most of the time, it's your parents trying to keep that profit so that they can buy nicer things, maybe a bigger house, or maybe have money for retirement for when they die, or for when they want to retire, or actually maybe give you guys an inheritance when they die. So that's what a profit is. In Jamestown, so Sir Thomas Dale came to Jamestown in 1611. In 1614, Thomas assumed control of the colony and decreed that people be allowed private holdings of 3 acres and the products of their private private holdings. Result was an increase in productivity. Same thing in Massachusetts. William Bradford arrived in Plymouth on the Mayflower. A year he was elected the 2nd governor and re-elected 30 consecutive 1-year terms. Now they did not believe in a 4-year term for a governor or a 2-year term. You had to get re-elected every year. So he got voted in 30 times in a row for 30 years. He laid the blame for the disaster that was Plymouth Colony on Plato, of all people, and other ivory tower philosophers who advocated unworkable communal systems. So what Bradford realized is that these communal systems, they sound great. Oh, everybody will get an equal share. Well, an equal share of misery is an equal share of misery. People should be allowed to keep what they produce. That's what the American dream really is. The American dream is not, oh, I can have a nice car, a nice house, 2.5 children. How many? Yeah. That's the statistic. The average number of kids most families have is 2.5 kids. I wonder how they get the half a kid, but you know, hey, that's kind of fun. It goes back to those Solomon days. Slice the dating in 2.
No.
You get the bottom half, you get the top half. No. This idea of the communal system, it doesn't work because of the fact that why should I be working for somebody else? That's to me, we call that slavery. So William Bradford in 1623, he instituted private agriculture and land ownership. In the history of Plymouth plantation, which plantation in this sense is not a southern plantation where they have slaves, that's not what it means. Sometimes we equate words from the past to mean something else when in their original they mean something different, so we got to be careful. He describes the pathetic and degraded condition of colonists during the communal times. Many, he wrote, sold away their clothes and bed coverings. Others so base were they became servants to the Indians and would cut them wood and fetch them water for a cupful of corn. Others fell to plain stealing both night and day from the Indians, which was probably not a good way to have relations with the Indians. Massachusetts Bay Colony thrived under Bradford's changes. By the end of his tenure, with private property and free market economics firmly established, New Englanders had possibly the highest standard of living in the world. In 30 years, they went from death and poverty to being basically the place to be in the world. So think about that. These principles work, and we'll get more into that in our government class. So, summary, step by step, they introduced private property, which is one of probably the base 3 rights in the Constitution. I mean, you think about it. We the people are not. Which one? I'll have to look it up. I'm drawing a blank. My mind's going to too many places at once. Once men and their families could keep what they produced, the streets emptied of game players, Indian villages emptied of service. Women and children suddenly found that they did, in fact, have the strength to work the fields because they could keep what they earned. And, of course, the dying times ended. Now, I want to get into some things. Oh, don't worry, I'll send you these.
Okay.
I will send you all my slides so you guys just take notes of what's important. Because sometimes I will go very, very quick. Sorry. English history. In England, we have what was called the Cavaliers and the Puritans. And they constantly clashed in civil war. In fact, there was a huge, huge civil war in England. The Puritans were from the country, and they settled mainly in the northern colonies. The Cavaliers were more the nobility, and they settled in the southern colonies. So, which really explains why in the beginning that a lot of our rebellion against England came out of where? The north. It comes out of Boston. A lot of this comes out of Boston and the northern areas. Now, some of our greatest leaders actually come out of Virginia. So the Puritans settled in the north, the Cavaliers, they pretty much settled into the south. Between the two civil wars, they allied against their colonial masters in a war for independence, reconstituting court and country to fit American circumstances. The Puritan North actually becomes more court, and the Cavalier South becomes more country, which is why up north we tend to be more factory, more, you have the English or the Massachusetts families. You can see that if you look at the history, you can see that move into the court. And the Cavalier South becoming more country, which is why this even leads into the Civil War. You have a more sophisticated northern and a more country-ish, agricultural-based country south. And also the feelings of freedom, the desire for freedom and such, all comes from that want of being free from the oppression of government out of the South. So that kind of gives you a little bit of why the North is the way it is and why the South is the way it is, because of the different cultures out of England that actually settled into these regions. A lot of history books don't get into those ideas and don't follow along with it. So that's what I want to cover for now. Now I want to get into what we're going to do, we have coming up. So I'm going to give you guys this. I want you to do this. This is going to be this is a sample of a perspective article, which we did not get to go over last week, so that's why you didn't have one due. So what I need you guys to do is read that briefly. I need to make copies of this sheet, and I will be right back, so read through that. You guys are done. Everybody done? Anybody not done? Don't be afraid to say you're not done if we come to the reading class, because I'm like one of the slowest readers around. Nothing wrong with it. Okay. So the second page that I just handed out is typically what we would do for a perspective article. So we're going to do this one in class so that you know exactly what will be required of you for the one I'm going to send you. So I will send this to you in both Word format and as a PDF. So if you like to type up your answers, you can go into the Word document and type your answers in. If you prefer to write your answers out, then you can just print the PDF out and you can then fill in your answers on the pages. Okay? Pretty simple. So I'll send you an article like this. Some of them will be even harder, more difficult to understand than this one. So good luck with that. I don't grade you on correct answer. I grade you on your thought process. So if you're thinking, like the first question here. So for this article, what is the main topic or conclusion of this article? What would you guys say? Yes?
This may seem very brief, but it's like government.
Okay, what about the government? Good, bad, indifferent? What's he saying in the article?
I mean, I guess he's talking about how like every person has not like a bad side to them, but you know, like something that they
Yeah. It's basically, he talks here about, so in this, he's talking about we're selfish, right? We're selfish, we're sinful. Now, how does that relate? Because he's also talking here about government. How does that relate to government, though? in this article?
Because humans are like, they're the government.
They're using their power to achieve whatever they want.
Exactly. So that's exactly, so looking at both these answers here about government and selflessness, is you have what he's calling here the shadow government is really this, the idea that we have a bunch of selfish people who want to get their own way. So what they do is they write their own laws that they can ignore. So they write laws, so we got governments that write laws that we have to follow, but they don't. A good example is Obamacare. They wrote the Obamacare law, which got passed, but guess who didn't have to follow it? Congress. Congress got to do whatever they want to do with their own health plan. Doesn't sound right to me. Doesn't sound like good leadership either. But this is what goes on because people are selfish, and really when you look at the people that are running our government, what they're trying to do is actually win votes to get reelected. That's their whole goal. Question number 2, very, very similar to the first question. However, here what we're looking at is what's the author's purpose in writing the article? Is he writing an expose? Is he writing something that's informative? What's he trying to teach us? Is he trying to get us to understand more what's going on in the government? Is he trying to get us? So that's what you're going to answer with this question, is try to think, what is that author, not just the main topic, but what is he trying to do with that main topic? And that's what the answer would be. And in this case, I would say that he's trying to inform people that the government is not made up of these holy people who really want to do what's best for everybody. Really what they are is people who want, he's trying to inform us that these people basically want to take on more power, and they want to be lorded over us as well, in natural sin nature. Question number 3, is the author objective, or does the author have an agenda? And you're going to need to explain your answer. So what do you think? Is the author objective in this, or does he have an agenda?
I would say he almost has an agenda to show us that the government has an agenda.
Correct. You will find 90% of everything you read online, in the news, that you hear from the news, has an agenda. They're not being objective. Prime example, Fox News, not really a big fan. Anybody remember what Fox News' tagline is? You guys ever seen Fox News? So Fox News tagline is, you decide. They give you both sides and then you decide. Well, sometimes some of their famous stuff is, President Obama interviewed today on the campaign or out there, says the Republicans want to steal food from the mouths of babies. John Boehner, what do you have to say about that? Well, no, of course not. We don't want to steal food from the babies. You decide. Decide what? So it basically sets up, well, if you're for the Republicans and John Boehner and you follow, you're going to agree with John Boehner. If you follow Obama and you're on Obama's team, you're going to follow Obama. This is why our political system is so divided right now. Because what's missing? What's missing from Fox News? God? similar to that. What should the news be after?
The truth.
The truth. But you will find that the news media is never really after the truth. No one is truly after the truth. A great example of this, this happened several years ago, so this might be a little too old for you guys. The Duke lacrosse team, anybody know the story? There was just a really good documentary on this. The Duke lacrosse team had this huge party, and stupid college boys that they were, they invited a prostitute over to she wasn't a prostitute. I think she was an exotic dancer, which means she, of course, took her clothes off and danced around at their party. Well, she left the party and then later accused the team and 4 boys on the team of raping her. They arrested the 4 boys. The news media was all over it. They disbanded the Duke lacrosse team for these things. I mean, they basically just went after this. Of course, it was 4 white boys, and the girl, I think she actually happened to be black, and they pitted that. And see, this is again where the news media is not about the truth. It's about selling news. Remember that. So they pitted this poor black girl against these 4 mean white country boys who abused this girl. Turns out she lied. And then the prosecutor knew she was lying, but still, because he was in for re-election, he continued to prosecute those 4 boys because he wanted to win re-election for prosecutor again. And so he ends up winning that case. He ends up winning re-election, but then it comes out all these dirty, undermined things that happened, and these guys were found, of course, found innocent, and that prosecutor ended up losing his license and he went to jail. Served him right for lying. So the news media is not about the truth. Another example is just recently, I think it was two guys were accused of killing somebody, and they were put in jail for a long period of time. And I think it's almost like 20 years, and they were just recently released because they found out that the chief witness finally came forward and said that they lied. They weren't there. 20 years. You spend 20 years of your life in prison for a crime you didn't commit. But the news media, they're not interested in finding out the truth. Of course, the news media loves the story of that. Now, the government put these guys away for 20 years. Well, where was the news media investigating for the truth for these guys 20 years ago? Probably, if you went back and looked at the newspapers, I bet you their stories were against those 2 guys when they were convicted back then. So it's this whole balance. We have to understand where the truth is and where the lies are. And one of the things that I don't do is trust the news media. Everybody has an agenda, and they're always trying to get their agenda through. Same with Trump. Same with Hillary, same with Barack Obama, same with Boehner, same with all of these guys. They're not necessarily interested in the truth. They're interested in power and getting votes. So what you will do with question number 3 is basically just, hey, this author, in this case, he has an agenda. He's trying to tell us what his view of government and so forth is. Rarely will you find somebody who's an objective. And some of the things that you can do that helps is explain why you think. Well, he has an agenda because he's trying to persuade us to view this the same way he does. You can see that in what he says in and just give a little quote of what he's talking about. That's the easiest way of doing that. The fourth question's a little harder. The fourth question is, what's the author's worldview? Now, what you're looking for is, do you think that this author may be a Christian, not a Christian, secular? You can even, if you want to, pull up this guy's bio, pull up the author's bio that I sent you. You can do that. It's called Google. Just kidding. You guys don't know what Google is. I'm being funny for you. I will be sarcastic like that every now and then, so you just have to laugh at it. So what's the author? So you're going to look this up and try to get an idea and maybe see what this is, or try to tell from the article. There's going to be times where you're reading it and go, wow, this is about something like this. He doesn't quote scripture. So your answer might be, I am not exactly sure this, but there's no real evidence in the article whether the guy's a Christian or not. And his bio does not appear that he says anything that's Christian. But then there's going to be stuff where it's like, wow, this guy really has some biblical perspective on this. In fact, there might even be some articles where they might quote scripture. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a Christian, though. But you could say they come from a Christian worldview. I think you will find in most society today, I call it the Christian haze in our country. The reason why I call it the Christian haze is because there's a lot of people who believe and do the things they do because there is this underlying atmosphere of Christianity. But it's a haze because or you could even almost say a fog, because the Christian fog and influence that used to be this bright, powerful light is slowly and slowly diminishing its strength in the United States. But our culture is still greatly influenced by Christian principles. Love your neighbor. Don't do what is right. Think about even the homosexual movement. Think about the movement for equality. The problem is we've confused some of those things with what is true biblical principles. When we talk about equality, well, in God's eyes, everybody's equal, right? Well, then that means that everybody should get paid the same, right? But that's not what that's not the biblical principle. The biblical principle would be everybody's equal in value to God, meaning Christ died for all. But we are not equal in talents. Think of the parable of the 5 talents. One guy had 5, one guy had 2, one guy had 1. So we have different, what I call, economic value. Your economic value is what you bring value-wise to an economy or to a company. And you should get paid based on your economic value, which I think is why the San Francisco 49ers should cut Colin Kaepernick, because currently his value to the team is horrible for what he gets paid. So, just my own personal. Then, question 5. Do you agree or disagree with the author's conclusion? Give examples why or why not. And why or why not, and give examples from the article. The give examples is to help you there. I don't necessarily need an example from the article, but what I'm saying there is, what in the article did you agree with? And maybe even if you want, I agree with his premise, but I disagree with this. And you can say, here's what I agreed with, here's what I disagreed with, why. I want to see why you agree or disagree. Then, what we will look at is question 5. Is there a time in history that is similar to what we discussed in this article? And many people go, oh, no, I couldn't think of anything. It's like, this is history class. There's nothing new is happening under the sun, except maybe the iPhone 5 might be something new. I don't know if there was an iPhone 5 in the past, or the iPhone. I guess we're actually on 7 now, aren't we? iPhone 7. So what's similar in history that how about our founding? That might be a good example. Think about the fact that you had during the founding of our country, when when the founding fathers decided to call for independence, at the time they were rebelling against a king who was more interested in his needs and his wants and what he was trying to do than what was out of for the actual country. And another good example would be King Louis. What is King Louis' famous statement? I am the state. King Louis out there, I am the state, meaning that, all of the country exists for me and to please me. Huge sin nature there, but very, very similar in the same. What I'm trying to get you to do is, again, the whole process of doing this article is just really to get you to think. And to the second purpose would be, don't accept everything that you read, especially off the internet. There's so many things out there that just aren't true. Again, to go back to just one example, I could pull out hundreds, but the one, I just saw that documentary on the Duke lacrosse team just like a month or two ago, and it was like, just brought back the whole thing that happened in that time, and what a terrible tragedy that is for 4 kids. The coach, who was the coach of the Duke lacrosse team, he lost his job because they ridiculed him as creating this kind of entitled culture, a blow to the whole Duke community, and it's sad that the news media is not about the truth, that they're about going after, or they're about the narrative and the story. So don't trust what you hear, even from, some parents would say, the beloved Fox News, or CNN, or the Clinton News Network, or as another one that MSNBC, or as Mark Levin calls them MSLSD. You guys all know what LSD is, right? LSD is a hallucinogenic drug that was very popular in the 1960s. It gives you hallucinations. So that's why he calls it MSLSD. Because they're hallucinating half the time. So just, that's the whole goal is, looking at history. We're living history on a day-to-day basis, why we want to do current events, and why we want to read these articles. And I will be sending you the one due this week tonight. So actually maybe even this afternoon. I already got it ready to go. So you'll get it and read through it. We also have, towards the end of the year, we'll do a perspective video. So what we'll do is if we've got time, it works out. Last year, because of all the snow days we had, or actually we didn't have snow days last year. We had to close twice because of construction in the building, because of the asbestos removal. So we weren't able to do the video in class, but typically I like to do the video in class, and then, which is kind of cool because you just answer, we just go through you just write down the answers as we talk about it in class. So it's kind of nice. Okay, any questions about the perspective article? If you have any questions, feel free to, send me an email, and use my Gmail account, of course. Yes?
So when it says, is there a time in history that is similar, etc., do we have to put a year or a time frame?
Nope.
Or just, yeah.
If you want to say, yes, during our founding, during the founding of the country, was this, this reminds me of when Moses was leading the the Hebrews out of Egypt, and his father-in-law came to him and said, hey, you need to put people, something like that, different things. So it could be something biblical from the Bible, it could be something from history, because remember, the Bible is history. And as Christians, we believe that the Bible is true. So that's what we're kind of looking for. Yes?
Do we have to turn in this page that goes with this, or
No.
is this just me?
I just need the paper that you guys, so if you type this out, I just need this. I don't need the actual article. I can print out my own copy if I need it.
So we do need to turn in the one that we did today.
No, that's your example. This is your example. I will send you a new one.
Yay.
Sorry. No, you don't. Well, good. It'll be a good example for you then. Oh, yeah, I should get your homework. You guys have your homework? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, that's all there is to it. Activity 1? Yes. Yeah, like I said, I'm not a big fan of chapter 3. So. Any other questions? Okay, let's take a break, and we'll come back and get started on government. Mr. Lance, we'll see you next week.
Fine, Mr. Lane.